Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our daily Israel Education Online with our amazing Alexander Muss High School and Israel teachers. This is a joint program between Alexander Muss High School and Israel and Jewish National Fund. And today it is my pleasure to introduce, as I said before, a teacher who needs not much of an introduction for all of us who are familiar with Alexander Muss High School in Israel, but I'm going to do my best to read David's bio off of the website and then turn our class over to David today. So David Mitchell was born and raised in Northern California. He completed a double BA in history and Hebrew texts at the University of California, Berkeley, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. He then received an MA with honors in Bible from Hebrew University. David made Aliyah in 1975 and lived on kibbutzim for 7 years. He's married to Ruti, a native Israeli, and together they have 2 sons and 2 daughters. David has been in education since college and served as a teacher in Jewish day schools and Hebrew schools in Northern California and worked as a research and teacher's assistant while in graduate school. He taught history for the Young Judea Year course and taught career soldiers history and Hebrew grammar while serving in the IDF between 1980 and 1982, where he's still on reserve duty. In 1984, David became a teacher at Alexander Muss High School in Israel. During that time, he also served as an Israeli emissary for the youth department for the Jewish Agency, the Pacific Southwest region of USY. In addition to teaching history, he has also traveled to the United States with AIM-HSI to train Philadelphia-based Jewish educators and has served as scholar in residence in Boca Raton, spoken on campuses across the country and elsewhere. And David is our outgoing Dean of Israel Studies, and it doesn't say in his bio, but has taught probably at this point, David, hundreds, if not thousands of students through Alexander Muss High School in Israel. And it really is quite the pleasure and honor to learn with you today. David Mitchell, the class is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been a long time since I've actually taught a class. Last time I taught at HSI, a full session was this session that we're not having right now in 2015. And other than that, I do Divrei Torah at my synagogue, which is about 6 minutes, because if you can't do it in 6 minutes, it's not worth doing. But this time I'm expanding. It's going to be more than just one thing. We're going to take a look, and it was actually fortuitous that Danny realized about 2 weeks ago that he was doing his thing on something that fit for Yom HaShoah, and asked me to trade with him. And then as he did that, I realized that mine probably fits for tonight, Erev Yom HaZikaron, which began almost 10 minutes ago here in Israel, since it's really in our El Malei Rachamim, in the prayer that we say that's called over the dead, but that we actually specifically say about the soldiers. It really counts as soldiers for all time. And we're here today because of the exemplary way that our people have acted over the millennia. And so let's take a look at some of them. And the bottom line is people look to Israel today. And maybe I'll start with the last of the wars. I'm going to work, and I'll work backwards. The last of our wars is the war that they say we're fighting now against the virus. And so just a few things that have been in the news that I want to share with you guys as we're talking about, again, the ingenuity that helps us to win our battles. And so I'm just going to share screen very quickly and flip through 3 things. You guys, if you can see here, you see this is, do you see what says Tel Aviv Hospital launches the tests? Is that what you're looking at? Okay.
Yes.
So notice they can figure out in an hour and a half. This is in today's times of Israel. Okay, that what you used to take in 4.5 hours or 3 days is now 4.5 hours, and now it's now. And so also today, Israel will soon be able to test hundreds of thousands daily, scientists claims. This was at the end of last week. Okay, excuse me, both of these were from Friday. Excuse me, they were both from Friday. And if I drop this share and I take something that was just today, hang on. Let me move this over and show you something that I was reading today as I was looking at my news before we started. And take a look. New test delivers results in just 45 minutes. So we went from Friday an hour and a half to now 45 minutes. And, oops, hold on a second. And if that's not enough, we've had in the last few weeks, article after article, that the biggest problem, and of course the reason why they are in such a frazzle about this pandemic, is mainly because they're afraid how many people are going to die because there won't be enough of the breathing apparatuses that they're going to need. And so if we just go article after article for the last couple of weeks, and hang on, let me share this one with you. Share screen. Hello? Okay. We see article after article of the Israel manufacturers, and here you can see it yourselves that the whole problem is with the ventilators. So a missile factory is going to be changed into a place where they can make ventilators, and this collaboration between the Ministry of Defense and the medical industry, and they've delivered their first 30, and this was 2 weeks ago, and we have the compact ones, and now we've got the states got to develop these the independent capabilities of everything related to dealing with it. And so another company, so okay, they take and then they make this new line. Another company comes up with something else that they can make, and this is going to cost very little money with the things they can find anywhere, so they won't have to worry about the parts. And what do? Instead of making a fortune for it, they take a look here. You can read it for yourselves. A prototype of a machine, and instead of patenting it, they're giving it to the world, right? So what they're essentially doing is they're taking this, what we call the Israeli know-how, that let's get a solution very, very quickly in order to solve our problems so that we can go on with life. And indeed, another thing that I read today in the news was that a woman was complaining that here we have not, in all of our wars here in Israel, we had blackouts in 1967. My wife tells me about it when she was, a teen, how in 1967 they had to black things out because she was living near the border. But the bottom line is that they weren't confined to their homes. And so suddenly here in Israel, people have been confined to their homes, and there are a lot of people saying, what's going on here? This has never happened before. We've got to find the quick fixes. That's what the Israelis do. They find the quick fixes. And one quick fix, which it feels like it came from one day to the next, even though it took a few years, was the thing that keeps us really feeling safe here in Israel these last number of years. And that's the Iron Dome and David's sling and everything connected to our safety of missiles coming at us either from the air, from very far away, or from very close by, or if it's just a direct shot with a I'm going to need some help with this one. What do you call those things? The missile, the shoulder-launched missiles that they can do in a tank that now even our tanks have. I think it's called David's sling, in order to keep that from damaging the tank and killing the crew of the tank. So those are things that it felt like just overnight. It took a long time, but it felt like it was just overnight that they were able to develop these things with this amazing, we call it brain power, know-how, call it what we want. But the question is where did all that really come from? And to get to that, I want to take us back to almost the beginning of times when we're dealing with battles and wars. And I want to take us to the time of Joshua. And I think you can see the screen. And what I'm going to do is I have a lot of text here, and I've essentially put in different colors things to specifically look at. The red means don't bother with it. But if we take a look at Joshua, and we go to the first conquest of the Jewish people, it's the conquest of Aaron Israel. And notice the first thing Joshua does when he takes over. He takes these two spies, and he says to them, go secret. He says to them secretly, go see the land of Jericho. Now we know that spies go somewhere secretly. That's what a spy is. Right? But it's not that the text is saying the same thing twice. It's that Joshua is talking secretly to the spies. Rather than 12 spies like Moses sends out, 12 spies that they make this huge ceremony where 12 guys are going to go out and check out the land, and everybody knows about it. Joshua is secretly sending these two spies. He says, go see the land. Okay? And the two men return, and they come to Joshua, the son of Nun, and they tell him all that had happened. Okay? Now, what happened in the time that they were there? They met this woman, Rachav, who is a prostitute. And Rachav essentially tells them that everybody's scared. They heard about the parting of the Jordan River and how the whole army crossed the parted Jordan River. They heard about how their armies had done the conquests before they got over into Eretz Yisrael, and they were shaking. And this is what she tells them: they were shaking. And they said to Joshua, notice, they say everything that happened. They say that Rachav said that they're scared. That's the important information that these spies gave to Joshua. So what's a good commander going to do? A good commander is going to get this information. He's going to figure out a battle plan that is going to use their fear and feed upon their fear. And in that way, they're going to go into Jericho and they're going to beat the city. So what's the battle plan? And I know that you guys can read out loud. You can read to yourselves. So I'm going to let this thing start moving. So I think many of us know the Battle of Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. But notice how they make the walls come tumbling down. So notice what he's telling them. Take 7 priests. By the way, when I do this, I've taken God out of the equation. Right? If you read the Tanakh, if you read the Bible, it's all about God and how God helped them and how God saved them and how God won the battles. Okay? But that's not going to help if we're going to learn from it. There's got to be something in there that makes it work. They believed that God really did it. That's all that counts. Okay? But for our purposes, I've taken God out. And so you'll see places where I needed the text, but I kind of put it in red so that you would skip those pieces. Right? The yellow and the green are the stuff that's for the going. So notice what he tells. He tells 7 Kohanim, 7 priests, to take 7 shofarot, right? And to take the ark into battle. The ark is God going with them. And the enemy's got to see that their God is with us, because they're afraid of our God that's so strong that's enabled us to win in the other battles. And they're going to go, and every single day, notice they're going to go around the city. And they're going to blow on the shofarot after these soldiers have gone around the city. Boom, 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 for that whatever amount of time that it takes. They're going around the city and blowing of the shofar, and then they're going to go back to their camp. And notice, and they do it the same thing on the 2nd day. And then they do it every day for 7 days. And on the 7th day, they get up even earlier. And they go around the city 7 times, the same way that they'd done it all the other days, except this time, on the 7th time, and now we're in verse 16, on the 7th time, the Kohanim blew on the shofarot, and Joshua tells the people, scream out. Okay, give the battle cry, because God's given the city to you. And so the people cried out on verse 20, and they kept blasting on the shofarot. And when the people, okay, and meaning the people of Jericho, heard what was going on, and the wall fell down, or as in the song goes, and the walls came tumbling down. Okay, and they captured the city. Right? So there's our battle of Jericho. Now, what's really going on here? What was Joshua's big battle plan? So the question is, how do the walls come tumbling down? And did the walls come tumbling down? I once translated an article to English for a friend's father. And it was about if the walls were built in a certain way, when they come down, they don't really come down, but they were able to get the walls down. And his father, it was very interesting, wrote exactly what I had been teaching for about 15, 20 years before I translated that article for it. But it looks like there were 2 things going on here. First of all, Joshua is fighting the psychological battle of all psychological battles. Okay, he heard they're scared. Let's work on their fear and make them even more fearful. And so when it says, and the walls came tumbling down, it could mean the walls of their resistance. On the other hand, could it be that every day as they were going around the city, there were other soldiers trying to find or even battering on the walls in different places in order to punch some holes in the wall, that on the 7th day, when they're going around 7 times, they could complete what they were doing And at the last moment, as they're going to blow their shofarot, they actually push through the walls. And so the walls actually do come down in such a way, not maybe all the walls of the city, or maybe it's just enough so the troops can get into the city, and then they wipe them out. Now, the truth is they have never found the Jericho of that battle, because the Jericho that one could go visit did not have a wall in the time of Joshua. Or I take that back, it did not have a Bronze Age wall. The latest wall they have there is a Chalcolithic wall. So, and I personally believe that if the wall wasn't broken, don't fix it. I had an epitome when I was actually with Elchanan. I know he's watching this. The first time I was in Poland with the group, Elchanan was a madrich, and we saw the walls of all these different cities and castles. And it was amazing because they were made of the white stone that they used in the 13 and 1400s. And they fixed it later on with the red stones, when they started with the red bricks. But they never took the whole wall down. They always just fixed it. So I said to myself, well, maybe it was the same way in the land of Canaan many, many centuries ago, that if the Stone Age wall still worked, the Chalcolithic wall still worked, why take it down for a Bronze Age wall just because you've gotten into the Bronze Age? Fix it with bronze carved stuff, but leave it there. But there's nothing there, and I don't know. So let's go on to the next battle. Okay, let's keep going with Joshua, who is really a master at tactics. So we move on to chapter 8. Okay, chapter 8 is the Battle of Ai. They lost the first battle. So Joshua's got to come up with a better tactic. They went on front on battle. They came out to meet them, and the people of the army of Ai routed them. So what is Joshua going to say? We've got to try something different. So take a look, and you can read it yourself as it's going on. So Joshua tells his men when they get to Ai, here's what we're going to do. I want a bunch of you to lie out there in ambush. You're going to hide outside the city. Now, then I'm going to go over there with a whole bunch of our soldiers, and you're going to draw them, and we're going to fight against them. They're going to think we're doing the same thing as last time. We're a bunch of idiots, so we don't learn from our mistakes. And they're going to come out, and they're going to chase us. And that's good. And they're going to chase us far away from the city. And we're going to let them take us far away from the city. We're going to run like hell, and we're going to go away from them. As we're doing that, what I want you to do, right, is we've drawn them from the city. It sounds like the cowboys and Indians when I was growing up, when that's exactly what they did. They drew the cowboys or the cavalry away in order to go do whatever they were going to do. And here we've got it again. But as we've done that, what you do is you get up, and I'm on verse 7, you get up from the ambush and go take over the city and put it on fire. And then we're going to kind of come back in your direction, and they're going to see that the city's on fire. And when they see that you've actually captured the city, then you'll come out and we'll work together. And the bottom line is we've just taken another city. And so here, through drawing them out and through ambush, Joshua conquers the city of Ai. Okay? And that's what we have in chapter 8 of Joshua. And he's making a real name for himself as a conqueror. So much so that the big city of Givon is now scared. Now, the big city of Givon comes to make a pact with Joshua. And they make it as if they'd come from afar. They lied, they did. And in any case, they made a pact with Joshua, so Joshua can't attack them. And even though when he realized it, where am I? Hold on one second. And so when Joshua finishes that, once he's made peace with them, Joshua is going to go back to where the army is, and they're going to be sitting there and waiting for their next attack. And what happens? Okay, let me just finish and get rid of this one. Okay, so the 5 kings, here we go, excuse me. So Adoni-Tzedek, the king of Jerusalem, realizes he's captured Jericho. He's captured Ai. He's made peace with the Givonim. And what Joshua has done, he's gone from the Jordan River. He's gone up the Judean mountains from the desert side. He's captured essentially the main road, which is the Patriarch's Road that goes through the mountains. And now he's at a point where he can literally cut the country in half. And those 5 kings want to stop him before he goes any further. So he gets himself a consortium of 5 kings, and they essentially lay siege to Givon, because they want to get the Givonim out of the way because they're a very strong city. He wants them out of here because they made a pact with Joshua. And the Givonim who made a pact with Joshua realize that he's the one that's going to save them as well. And so they send to him and say, hey, you're our ally, you got to save us. And what does he do? He takes the night and he takes this amazing hike. He goes up a valley, goes up a valley from the Jordan River, essentially, all the way to the top of the mountain. He spends the entire night hiking up there. Okay? And notice, it's in verse 7. So he goes from Gilgal, and he's got all of his soldiers with him, men of valor. And verse 9, and he came on them suddenly. Now, what's the real suddenly? What's the amazing piece of this? They went all night. They took a serious hike that would take most people an entire day. And they went faster than who knows what, and really double time marching to get up there. They get there, no rest, no nothing. Pre-dawn, they attack the 5 kings' camps, okay? Which is something they would never have expected to happen. And take a look at what happens. As they've confused them totally, in their sleep, as they're waking up to a battle, if they're grabbing their swords and whatnot, which hopefully they did, they're running away. And where are they running to? They're going down the Beit Horon ascent, and I'll show you that in a different battle later on. They're going down the Beit Horon ascent, and they are essentially running to the valley called the Ayalon Valley. That if you think about the road that goes from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that it goes when it gets just before it starts the climb to Jerusalem. For that 5 or 6 miles before that, they're in the Ayalon Valley, a huge valley, a perfect place for armies to be, so they can go against each other in a gentlemanly way for a war. And so what Joshua does is he routes the 5 kings toward that and their troops toward that valley, and he's coming down the Beit Horon ascent behind them. Right? Now I want you to picture this. It's now getting light. Joshua's coming down from the east, and they're in the valley below, and they're going to turn around for the counterattack. And when they turn around for the counterattack, what do they see? The sun in their eyes. Now they're going, it's like you're driving your car, you're trying to go like this to see. They've got the sun in their eyes. And Joshua is coming down with his troops. Is it any wonder why at that point we hear Joshua saying, and take a look at this right here, let the sun stand still upon Givon and the moon in the Ayalon Valley. Which many of you have probably seen. It happens all the time here in Israel, and I believe I used to see it as a kid in California, that the sun is already up and there's still the remnants of the moon on the other side. And here we've got it. Joshua is saying, I want the time. Give me the time to be able to rout them and keep the sun exactly where it is, exactly in their eyes, so it gives us time to wipe them out. Now, if you ask experts, they'll tell you that the road, there's 4 or 5 different roads that they could have been taking down from Yerushalayim, that some of them would have taken a full day to get there. Some of them they could have done it in about 2.5, 3 hours or 4 hours. So there's this whole argument about how it could have happened and how much of this could actually be true. But the bottom line is the tactic is surprise them while they're still in their sleep, and then rout them and put them in a place so that they're running down a hill, they can't counterattack, so you can be getting all their stragglers as they're escaping. And then they're going to finally have to come back and do the counterattack, but you still at some point have the sun in their eyes for at least the first part, so you can complete the battle. And that's Joshua's 3rd battle. And with this, he wipes out those 5 kings, and he essentially is getting himself ready to be able to continue with the conquest of the rest of the land. Okay, if you'll do me a favor, let's unmute the microphones. So I invite everybody.
I'm going to unmute. I'm going to unmute everybody, but then I'm going to remute everybody so we can do this. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Unmute all.
I have.
It's going to be noisy for a second, and then I'm going to mute everybody. Give me 1 second. Everybody should have the ability to unmute themselves, David.
Okay, so guys, if anybody wants to make a comment, I'm using 3 screens, so I'm not going to be able to see this chats, and I don't even have everybody on one screen in front of me to see your faces. So if you have something you want to say, a question you want to ask, anything at all, don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay?
And I will also add, you can also chat the question, and I'm happy to read the question out loud. And then at some point, we'll enable the chat for everybody. So everybody should have the ability to unmute themselves.
Okay, so that was our first time period, and that was Joshua. So let's skip to the period of the Judges. The period of the Judges gives us something very, very interesting. Okay, notice as you're looking at this, that the book of Judges tells us specifically that the children of Israel did not totally conquer the land of Canaan. And it was by divine design, or let's say God knows best. Because if we don't have any enemies to keep us on our toes, then we'll forget when we need to know how to fight. And that's exactly what it's telling them here. But not only that, notice it also says, and I'm really skipping this, right? Because it's also, they said, they putting in there now their biblical comment, the godly part, that this whole thing is a test to see if we can live amongst foreign people and not take on their ways. That's a test, notice, that we've been going through ever since, let's make this 1200 BCE. So this is something we've been going through the last 3,200 years at least. This whole test of how are we going to be able to deal with the people around us, living with them when we're at peace. Are we going to assimilate? Are we not? And that's something I know has come up a number of times. However, what I want to do is skip now. We're in the period of Judges. Judges were military commanders. And in ancient times, the military commanders, just as in today you have your military courts, you also had the families living with the soldiers on the bases. So the whole town is really like a base. By the way, the Syrians still have that on the Golan Heights. And so the judge is also going to be a military leader. And these were charismatic leaders of the time period. And the book of Judges gives us 12 of them. I'm just going to give you a couple of them, and just amazing things. Again, let's take a look. How am I going to have a problem that I can't deal with, and how am I going to deal with it, right? So let's take a look at Ehud. Ehud's going against the king. His name is Eglon. Anybody know what an Eglah is? As in like the Eglah Rufa? Eglah, somebody? Somebody unmute and tell us what it is. Okay, it's a cow, okay? And in this case, it should tell you, because in the Tanakh, in the Bible, Kishmo Kenhu, their name usually describes who they are. Like David is beloved, and he was beloved by the people. Shlomo is Shalom. There was not a war in the entire time he was king. Or Yedidiah is his other name, which is a friend of God. Eglon means the guy's a fat cow. Okay, and that's a very important piece of the story. You got to know it. That's the key here, right? So what does Ehud do? There's no way that we're going to be able to take over his army. So he's got to get rid of the, he's got to, you cut off the, how do they say it in Escape from Sobibor? If you cut off the neck of the snake, I forget the phrase they use, but they won't function. And so what does he do? And take a look. Okay, first of all, he makes for himself, look at verse 16. He makes a sword with 2 edges, which tells you that we're still in a time period that most swords in those days had 1 edge. Now he's sharpening on 2 edges, but not just that. He's a cubit in length, but in Hebrew it's better, gomed or ka. Okay, he's making it little. He's making a little sword, double-edged. In other words, he's making a dagger. Now, by the way, they have found 3,000-year-old daggers. Not in this area of the world, but they found 3,000-year-old daggers. Is he inventing the first Western dagger? Maybe. Okay, and then what's he doing? He's putting it on his right thigh. Now, where do you put your sword? You put your sword, most people are left-handed. You're going to put it on your left thigh because I'm a lefty, so it's hard for me to do it. I'm an Ehud. Okay, so he's putting it on his So if he's right-handed, he's going to be pulling it off his left. Now imagine every single person going in is going to come in and they're going to get frisked by the king's guards. And what are they going to do? They're going to frisk because it's a sword, right? So they're going to frisk down on the leg. They're not going to get really high up on the thigh. And so they frisk him when he goes in. Okay, now why is he gone to the king? Because he's the one that he's bringing the, what's it called? The mas. He's bringing the tribute for the year from the Israelites, or at least from his tribe, right? And so he's going in there and he brings the offering, right? And he offered the present. It's not a present, it's the taxes, okay? So he brings in the taxes, and then after he gets done bringing the taxes, okay, he's being sent away. But what does he do? He goes to the ford of the Jordan River, and over there are a bunch of psalim, there are a bunch of statues that were put there. It's a cultic spot that was actually put there by the people of Israel when they crossed into the land of Israel. And it's all a question what was going on in those, but everybody knew it was a cultic spot. What does he do? He gets to this cultic spot. He makes it as if he's dealing with God there. He goes back to the king. Okay, he comes back. Notice he comes back to Gilgal and he says, I have a secret errand and something to say to the king. And what does the king say? Shh, the walls have ears. Don't say a thing. Come with me. Now, where do they go? He goes to where the king sits alone. That's where this phrase comes from. Okay? He goes to the, how do I say it in nice English words? He goes to the place where there is the aliyat hamikera. He's going to a cool upper room. He's going to a room that has a lot of ventilation. And he's going to the bathroom. And they're in there in the bathroom. And so Ehud says, I got something to tell you about from God. And notice, and the king gets up from the seat. Right? And what does Joshua do? Except what does Ehud do? He takes his left hand and he grabs his dagger and he sticks it into Eglon's gut. And he stuck it all the way to the hilt. And hopefully you're reading this as I'm doing this. He sticks it all the way to the hilt and he leaves it there. And then here's the cute part. Vayetze Parshadona, the last piece. Now, how do they translate it? This is a good translation. I think this is from Esha Torah, by the way. And the excrement came out. Okay? Most translations say his guts came out. Rashi, right off the bat said he went to the bathroom. Okay? He does, but Rashi will go with the rest of the biblical commentators of his days and say his guts came out. Anybody who has been through the knivings and all these things in Israel knows you don't pull out a knife because you want to keep whatever's in there. But when you're dead, the one thing that comes out is the excrement. Okay? So it's clear he's killed him. Now, we haven't gotten to the fat part yet. Okay? But here's the real key. Look at the next verse. So Ehud goes out there. He locks the door behind him. It's like lock and throw the key away. And then the king's men saw, the guards, saw that Ehud had gone away. And what do? They go over there to check on the king. And notice, look at the bottom of line of verse 24. Right? Now, how do they know? Okay, surely he's covering his feet. And Rashi, like I said, Rashi translates covering his feet. Osehu tzrachav. He's doing a number 2. Okay? And how do they know that's what's going on? Because they smell it. And why aren't they worried? Because they got the fat king who's constipated. And so they're used to this. But how long is it going to take the guy? And then they say, and so they stood around these guards until it was too late. And he still didn't open the door. So what do the guards do? They break the door open. They see that he's fallen dead. Now word gets out to the castle and everybody around that the king is dead. He's their fearless leader. They now have no leader. It's chaos. And in the meantime, Ehud, okay, and that's if you read the Hebrew proper, it isn't an Ehud. It's in the meantime, Ehud escaped and he went back to the Judean hills and he got to his people. And what does he say to his people? Acharai, follow me. right? And this is going to be the battle cry of the Jewish people from this point on. And the rabbis are going to say in rabbinic literature, in the Talmud, that a king is required to lead his troops in battle if it's a battle that one must do for the sake of Israel, right? Not if it's just to conquer more lands, but if it's for the sake of saving us, he has to be leading in battle. And if you notice, it's exactly what Israel's soldiers do to this day. The battle is being led by the high officers. And that's why Israel has perhaps the highest rate of high officers who die in any given battle. And so he says that famous word, follow me. They follow him down and they subdue the Moabites. And then we have another time where there's another judge, but this time we're going to give us the judges. And that's Dvorah. Dvorah is a real judges. She's a prophetess. She's not a military person. She might have a military mind, but she's not an Amazon. She's if we're going to talk about military women, she's not Gal Gadot. But she is a judges, and she's got a head on her shoulders. And what's the problem? Sisera, Yavin's general, has 900 iron chariots, right? And so they're going to call on the children of Israel, come to her for judgment. I'm going to keep going here. And she goes and she says, okay, we got a problem. We got to solve it. Who's the best person out there to do it? A guy named Barak. He's my general. And she goes to Barak and he says, I want you to be, hold on a second. And she says, I want you to be the general. Okay? And I want you to, she tells him exactly what she wants him to do. She tells him the battle plan. And you can look at it as I'm going to continue slowly as I'm talking. Okay? But she gives him this plan, but he says, wait a minute. I'm only going to do this, look at verse 8, if you go with me. If you don't come, I'm not doing it. Because I know you're the one that's going to give the people the oomph to really do it. And then she says, look, God, you want me to come? If I go with you, I'm going to get all the credit for the battle. They're not going to say Barak, who fought this great battle. No, they're going to say Dvorah. And he says, I don't care. Okay? So here you've got these two people, neither of them caring about the glory. All they want to do is free themselves from the enemy. And what's the plan? Okay, hang on. Okay, so she tells Barak, take your men and go up to the top of Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is that kneecap-looking mountain that has a church on the top in the Jezreel Valley. And it seems like it's a very small mountain. Try to climb it. Okay, and they're certainly not going to be able to climb that with chariots. And so she said, I want you to go up there with all of your men. Okay, I think she said 10,000 men, if I remember correctly. Go up there with your men. And what I want you to do is, I want you, when Sisera has heard that you're there, and he says, now we can wipe him out because he's really, full of it with himself. And now she says, take a look from verse 14. Okay? And she says, this is going to be that day. And what does she tell Barak to do? I want you to send troops to the other end of the valley where Sisera and his chariots are. And I want you to draw them into the valley. Draw them toward Har Tavor. Right? And as you draw them to the mountain. Now, I want you to think of, for those of you who are old enough to remember Custer's Last Stand, how they would be drawn into this gorge, right? And they would have a few Indians, like 5 or 6. This is like happened all the time. 5 or 6 Indians that would break into the gorge. They'd get there, and from every which direction they would be wiped out by the Indians that were waiting for them. And so this is exactly what's going to happen here, but it gets even better, because our people are agriculturalists, and Sisera is just this infatuated with himself general who thinks nothing can stop him. But Dvorah knows that it's going to rain today. And it's not just going to rain, it's going to be a downpour. And it's just not going to be a downpour, it's going to be a flash flood type downpour. And you tell me now, what good are horses and chariots in the mud? And so take a look now. So they confuse Sisera's army, they get stuck in the mud. They can't go up the mountain, and now they're running after his army. Okay, now it's become by foot. And notice, Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled on foot, because he can't go anywhere. The horse can't go anywhere. The chariot can't go anywhere. And so they're chasing him. And then here comes the best part. We got to do this since this is the women's battle. He gets to a place of the tent of Yael, and he and her husband and his king were what's the word? Had a brit. Were not united.
Alliance.
Well, thank you. We're allied, and so he felt he was safe there. Okay, but she knows a little bit better. She's got to choose sides, and she wants to choose the winning side. So notice she goes out to meet him. She says, "Here, you're safe with me," and she brings him into the tent. And now she says, "Give me some water to drink. I'm thirsty." And she gave him some milk, and she covers him, right? And it was probably warm milk, freshly brought out from the goat or from the sheep or from whatever it is she took it from. And she gives it to Sisera. And of course, he's really tired from the battle. And she says, "I'll stay guard," right? And if he says to her, "Stand guard." And if anybody asks if anybody's here, say no. And Yael says, "Fine, I'll do that for you." And she goes to guard at the front of the gate. And then he falls asleep. And she goes and takes a tent peg and pops it into his rakah. What do you call this thing? His temple, right? And she kills him, right? And the most amazing thing is how do we know about the rains? That's the best part, because this story isn't just prose. It goes on into an amazing poem, a song. And in that poem, it says, "From the heavens they fought. The stars from their courses fought against Sisera." Okay, so now we're talking about it's become a heavenly battle. Now let's, again, leave God out for a minute. What does that mean? It's a heavenly battle. But look at the next verse, right? The Kishon brook swept them away. Okay, now I know, in Israel, we have brooks. That's these little trickles of water that you go by, and it's a little bit of mud you might get on your shoes if you don't walk around it properly. And in the States, you have these little brooks or creeks, right? But you know what happens when suddenly it rains? A little brook turns into a flowing river. And that tells you this right here, and it swept them away. And again, figuratively speaking, right? But again, the battle wasn't just how do I make his chariots irrelevant by not being able to go up the mountain. So if they want to get me, they've got to come up the mountain. Once I've brought them to the mountain, even if it didn't rain, I now have an advantage because I've disabled the 900 chariots. I've got 10,000 men. So Barak's got it made. But to do it on a day where it's clearly going to rain. Now, I only spent 4 years in the fields as a farmer. But I can tell you, I was never surprised by rain at any time of the day. I woke up in the morning once and I said, we shouldn't be going out the fields today because I was going to Shachrit in the synagogue. I saw the sunrise. And from the color of the sunrise, it was clear to me that there was going to be a downpour that day. If anybody remember the movie, Red Sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in the morn, sailors mourn. It's true. Every farmer knows that as well. And sure enough, by 10 o'clock, I could barely get back. I had to leave. I could barely get back to the kibbutz from the fields where I was. It was the drench was so much. So this is it. And so she figures it out, and that's how she's going to win that battle. I want to go for another one. Again, how are we going to win a battle when we don't have a chance? And here we get to the famous battle of Gidon. That's going to be also fought in the Jezreel Valley. And he's got this huge Midianite army that he's got to go against. I believe there were some myriads. I mean, he started with 32,000. Gidon started with 32,000, and it wasn't enough. So there were myriads, tens and tens of thousands of the enemy down there in the valley, really good soldiers. And what has he got? Only 32,000 men, right? And he takes them and he realizes, I'm going to let this start moving so you guys can be reading it if you want to as I'm telling the story. And so he essentially says to his men, there's too many of them. Okay, we got to do something. So he tells all that are scared, go home, and he reads the laws from the Torah that says, what do you do in order to not have to play it? You're scared, go home. You just built a house, you didn't live in it, go home. You just got married, go home. And then he's left with 10,000 men from his 32,000. That's still too many. So now what does he say to them? He says, okay, come with me. And he takes them through a serious training. And he does, like the paratrooper training. There's a place at Wingate that's called, I forget what it's called. I can't remember at the moment what it's called. It's like a death trap. And he takes them there, and he's running them up, and he's getting down. He says, okay, and then he takes them after running really hard and working out really hard and everything they're doing, and he says to them, okay, and he says, okay, go drink. And they go to the water hole at Ein Chavod, and they go to drink. Okay, now take a look at verse 5. And he says to them, okay, now anybody who got down to the water and got on your hands and knees and started licking at the water and using your hands to get into your mouth because you're so thirsty, go home. Anybody who went down on one knee and brought the water up and was looking around while they were doing it, he says, stay here. Now he's left, as we're at verse 6, he's left with 300 men. Now imagine, he had 32,000, which was far too few to rout an army of myriads, and now he's left with 300 men. Okay, so take a look at what he does now. He gives them provisions. Okay, he gives each of them a shofar. He gives each of them a torch. He gives each of them a kad, something to cover the torch so it won't be put out, but they'll be able to have it so that it also made of clay, a clay vessel to put over it. And now he says, okay, but he's still not sure he's going to win. So what does he do? Take a look. He sends a reconnaissance. He goes down on reconnaissance, and look at the yellow now. And he listens to what they're saying. And he gets to the edge of the camp, okay, and he hears a person telling his friend, where are we now? Take a look. I dream a dream. You see that one there as we're doing it? And his fellow says, the sword of Gidon is going to get us. We're doomed. I mean, this guy already knows. And Gidon heard the dream, and he goes back to the camp, and he says, we got it. Okay? God's delivered us. We've got it. My plan is going to work because, again, I've got the tactic of fear. And here you've got it, guys. He gives them all the torches and the pitchers and the shofarot. And then notice what he says. Mimeni tir'u v'chein ta'asu. See what I do and do the same. And as he goes in there, and imagine he's divided the 300 men, each one spread apart, and they're going to be going in 3 different directions coming into the camp, and they're going to surround it, and they're going to be inside the camp. And at a certain point, they're going to break the pitchers, which is going to make tremendous noise, and they're going to see 300 torches. Well, when people fight a war, a torch is usually an entire unit minimum. And so what they see is 300 units. And suddenly these people being awakened by the noise and by the shofarot are hearing all of these different units, and they think that they have tens and far more people than they do. And again, he does the same thing to this camp as he had done the previous time that Joshua had done to the camp at Giv'on, and when he wiped out the 5 kings, and he's going to win this battle. So here we can see in biblical times, I see that it's almost time to stop. We can see that in biblical times, where is my stop share here? Disappeared. Do you guys see anything on my screen?
No, you're just you.
Okay, so you didn't have in front of you this whole time that the verses?
We had the verses and then they disappeared.
Yeah, the stop share disappeared. I don't know what happened. Okay, so in any case, there's not going to be time to go more, but I actually, the same thing is going to happen in Maccabee times. And the Maccabees are going to use the same type of tactics in order to beat their enemies. And again, they're going to use the same one used in the Beit Horon as Gid'on used for an amazing battle. And they're going to use guerrilla warfare for the first time. In the Bar Kokhba revolt, they're going to be the first ones in the world that we know of to use cave warfare, or tunnel warfare, which is essentially what they did in Indonesia, in Vietnam against us. Anybody who's seen, I think it was Good Morning Vietnam, how scared the troops were crawling through those tunnels that they had dug into the ground. And the first to do that was Bar Kokhba against the Romans, to the point that the Romans couldn't say at the end of the war, if you and your families are well, the troops and I are well, because the troops and they weren't well. we had wiped out entire legions of the Roman army, and the next people who vied for independence from Rome gained it. In other words, the Bar Kokhba revolt in many ways was the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire. It took another few hundred years, but it was really the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire, because the Bar Kokhba revolt did such damage to the Romans, again, through that tactic, especially of both guerrilla warfare and going into the caves. We kind of have to stop now because there's going to be a Yom HaZikaron ceremony in another 4 minutes. And so I want to invite, if anybody has any comments, any questions, please unmute yourself and ask.
And David, they can also email you or email me. And the other good news is, David, that we have you scheduled for another teaching. So whether you continue this lesson or teach us something completely new, people will also have a chance to follow it with questions as well.
Okay. Okay, so just give me, if so, Greg, I want to take, I've lost, here's my show. I want to share one thing just because it's JNF. So if you'll allow me here. You know, in modern times, you can see the slideshow, correct?
Yep.
In modern times, and this is a site that JNF has put money into, there's a place called the Ayalon Factory. And what they did is they're a bunch of people who actually wanted to be fishermen, but they were convinced that there was something more that needed to be done to make bullets, to help prepare for the war for independence. So in 18 days, they dug this huge pit, which looked like this, which is going to be for making, in the end, 2.5 million bullets, which are going to be able to service the war for independence. And let me get out of that slideshow and just go to the last slide. Just what Ben Gurion said, that you can see here. I doubt if there was a more heroic enterprise in the Yishuv, or any other operation involved such constant mortal danger as the concealed and secret work of that TAS is the military industry. I don't know which was greater, their modesty or their heroism. And the amazing thing is, if you take a look here, you see those hand grenades? Every one of those grenades said USA. USA, so the British saw it, they would think, you know, that we weren't making our own, and they wouldn't be trying to find a factory, that we imported it or smuggled it in from the USA. USA here means unsere selbe Arbeit, okay? It's our own work. In other words, we did it. And that's the way we're going to save ourselves, by being ingenious or having that ingenuity in order to do what needs to be done. Ben Gurion said, before they got to the Burma Road, he said, okay, I want you to think of all the reasons why we can do it. And then this other guy is going to say all the reasons why it won't work, and then we're going to make it happen. And that's exactly what happened in the War for Independence. And essentially, it's happened ever since. And again, it's due to the heroism, and I want to end with this for Yom HaZikaron, it's due to the heroism of every single one of our soldiers, not just the ones who unfortunately gave their lives, but also by those who are still alive today, whether they're on active duty, whether they've completed their active duty, because every one of us is also raising our kids to end up being in the army as well.
David, thank you as always for your wonderful teaching. Thank you everybody for joining us today. You can check us out each day at 1 o'clock daily, and all of our, yes, definitely applause for David. And you can check out all of our past teaching in today's class on our JNF YouTube website. David, thank you so much for the master class, and please tune in to Facebook Live in a few minutes for a special Yom HaZikaron ceremony. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
and most
you,
especially
David.
thank you, David.
Greg, it's not on here. How do I